All right, welcome to a Gallen of Questions. My name is Pat Gallen, and all of our guests, of course, are special, but not all of them could be called one of the GOATs of their sport, but this guy certainly can be. He's here in our studio. His name's Paul Rabil. He is the commissioner, the founder of Premier Lacrosse League.
Yeah, co-founder with my older brother Mike.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Serve as our president, so do a lot of commissioner stuff.
All over the place, and you've been in lacrosse circles for many years. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You're in town because the NCAAs are here, which is really cool.
Championship tomorrow on Memorial Day. I played at the Link twice in college. Special place for me. So
you know
I'll be
what
back.
it's all about in Philly?
Know what it's all about.
What do you think of Philly?
Oh, I love Philly as a sports town. I mean, my first team I played for out of college, I went to Johns Hopkins, was Boston.
Okay, yeah.
So I sort of see Boston and Philly as, and if you throw in maybe Chicago.
Okay.
Maybe a little New York. Now I'm starting to stretch, but really those four cities, I think, are the heartbeat of sports fans in America. They just bring it in every discipline.
I agree.
Philly may be the most hardcore.
I don't think we're necessarily known as like a lacrosse town, but I feel like that's building.
It's been building for the last 2 decades, I think, more than ever. You know, lacrosse really started, I should say, it's been around America for longer than any other sport. It's a Native American game. But as it's made its way from the Six Nations, which is sort of what's now Canada and New York, it made its way into Manhattan College, NYU, and then down to Johns Hopkins. So it was always like hotbedded in Long Island and Baltimore. Sure. Then Philly in between really became, you know, I think an emerging location where you see a lot of top talent now. Yeah. Played across public, private schools, and then has a slew of universities that play at a high level. I played
basketball, volleyball in high school. We didn't have a lacrosse team.
Did
not have one in our public school. Northeast High School, Northeast Philadelphia. I was always bummed that we didn't, because I was always I just love the sport from afar. Yeah. But in the public league, in the inner city, we did not have that. But I know that's rapidly changing now as the years go on.
I mean, it's kind of interesting because the derivative of hockey and basketball are lacrosse. The founding fathers, this guy James Creighton out of Canada and James Naismith out of Canada, started the rules for hockey and basketball, and both those guys played lacrosse. And they knew the guy George Beers, who wrote the rules for lacrosse in the 1800s. So the skill sets are very similar. And lacrosse was huge in America in the 1900s, and then it sort of dissipated a little bit as a lot of the public funding went into American football. And it's sort of in a bucket of hockey and golf, and that you need to, you know, have the wherewithal and the public support to be able to afford equipment. Yeah. Different than hockey and golf, we don't have to have ice time or green fees. But these are sports that, you know, require a little bit to play versus just showing up at a court and playing hoops or a field and playing soccer.
For those that may know the name Paul Rabil, but maybe don't know your full background, take us back. What was the start of it for you? Why lacrosse? Yeah, so
I mentioned Baltimore and Long Island being the hotbeds because I'm from Maryland, but we didn't see lacrosse sticks in the neighborhood I grew up in. So I grew up playing soccer and basketball, track and field, swimming, played every sport. And lacrosse sort of found me by my next door neighbor and saying, hey, come out to the local town team when I was in middle school. I tried it. I didn't like it because it was super complicated, difficult to catch on. But once you do, you create this bond to the game where I see a lot of kids in Philadelphia all the way around the country now that do, because there's an artisanship to it. You string your own stick, you own your own equipment, and then there's the team-based part of it. So I then committed to it, felt my athleticism from the other sports that I had started playing crossover into lacrosse, and that led me on a journey through high school, college, professionally, internationally.
And it's a pretty good resume you've got. All-American 4 times at Johns Hopkins, one of the greatest of all time playing lacrosse. But now you've taken that love of the sport and created an entire league, founded a league with your brother. What has that been like? Because that does not sound easy to do.
No, it's not easy. And, you know, Mike and I often say, like, if I was playing hoops or football, we would have tried to own a team. Sure. You look at leagues that have worked in America, it's taken a lot of time for the NFL to work. Major League Baseball was sort of the primary pastime. Basketball had a big run in the late 80s with David Stern. So for sports to hit the mainstream in America, they need a pro game that works. And I think that's probably one of the reasons why your high school didn't have lacrosse, is that pro hadn't quite made it in lacrosse.
Good point.
And so when I was playing professionally for the first 10 years, it was in a league called Major League Lacrosse. And at the time, we were seeing the UFC and MLS take off in America, but lacrosse was struggling. We had essentially like part-time owners and not a lot of resourcing that went into it.
Sure.
So towards the tail end of my career, I partnered with my brother, who's a serial entrepreneur, and we went to the league with capital to try to acquire and make something more out of professional lacrosse. We believed that we could.
Yeah.
We ended up starting our own league. All the players came over with us, and that was 5 years ago as we head into our 6th season. And now you can watch games on ESPN and ABC.
Yep.
We have major partners like Ticketmaster and Cash App and Gatorade and Champion. So the future of the game is bright.
What's been the biggest challenge, the most difficult part in getting this thing off the ground?
Well, I think if you look at all the major pro sports, they had stereotypical challenges, and then they had the challenge of just moving mountains of getting people to buy tickets and tune in and watch games.
Sure.
The stereotype for lacrosse was similar to what Don Garber and soccer had in America, which is, oh, these are the guys who got cut from the basketball and football team. And narrative is really powerful, and it takes a long time to overturn. There was actually a pretty big SportsCenter featured piece that just came out about guys like Pat Spencer, who was the Tewaaraton winner in college for Loyola, and now he's playing for the Golden State Warriors. Chris Hogan, who played lacrosse at Penn State, then he had a huge career with the New England Patriots. And trying to change that narrative, which I think we're really down the path of, and frankly, deserving, because the athletes that play lacrosse, the amalgamation of skills is unlike anything else.
You guys are coming here, PLL in Philly, June 15th and 16th.
Yeah.
For the Philadelphia Water Dogs. If you're not familiar with that, we have a team based here in Philadelphia.
New this year,
right, because it was just called Water Dogs before that, but now we're Philly based, which is really cool because, as you said, we're such a great sports town.
Yeah.
And I could see that growing here exponentially as you could, which is why it's here.
Yeah.
So 15th and 16th of June. But for those that don't know the PLL, don't know their teams, like what's your elevator pitch to get people on board, watch it, come out and see it?
Well, 100% come out and see it. and if you can't make it out on the 15th and 16th, then you'll be able to watch it on ESPN or ABC.
Okay.
Every game weekend, there is a televised game on either of the major networks of ABC, ESPN, or ESPN2. For me, I think, look, lacrosse embodies the hand-eye coordination of hockey, the agility and two-man game of basketball, the endurance and creativity of soccer, the contact of football, and you see these athletes take the field, and you'll see a pace of play at the pro level that you haven't seen, I promise, at any other moment watching lacrosse.
What's next, do you think, for not only your league, but for lacrosse as a whole? Like, where do you see this going, a year, 5, 10, all that?
Well, I talked briefly about our past. It's been around for 1,000 years.
Sure.
It was one of the first games played at the university level. It was once in the Olympics in 1904 and 1908. Then it fell out of Olympic favor. We've since gotten it back in, end of last year. So what we have to look forward to is in LA for 2028 Summer Olympics, lacrosse will be there. There's 91 countries that are officially sanctioned right now. They're playing around the world. I mean, when I started playing, there was 18, and probably just as many states. Now we have it across the entire country, 91 others, and it's going to be in the Olympics in a matter of 4 years. And now between then, you'll see the PLL continue to do this.
So that's big. LA Olympics, that's huge. Having it in towns like Philadelphia, I think, is amazing as well. For you specifically, you got a new book out, which is pretty cool. Did you fancy yourself a writer before you took the dive into this? The book is called, by the way, The Way of the Champion: Pain, Persistence, and the Path Forward, written by Paul Rabil.
Yeah. No, I think I struggled writing as a kid, and I was a political science major at Hopkins. I get my papers back, and they were just marked up and read. But that encouraged me to learn how to write. It's very similar. Like, I think you'll find a lot of former athletes bring on a level of thick skin where they're very coachable. They love to take on challenges, and they look at odds differently. When you play professional sports, you're the 1% of the 1% of the 1%. So the fear of me becoming a first-time author, I was like, why can't I? We've done a documentary film. I have no classically trained filmmaking background, but you study, you work really hard, and you try to put your most authentic self out there. I think for the reason we've sat down and had the wide range of conversation, even in the last 10 minutes, is why I was kind of pushed to write a book. It's difficult to play pro sports, really difficult to build a business. Very few people build a sports league.
Sure.
And then all this other stuff that happens in the middle, which for me was learning from others.
Right.
So the book is actually a compilation of lessons from the greatest athletes, entrepreneurs, and entertainers, and how they're sewn into the construct of our life in a progression of amateur to professional to beyond the game.
How long did it take you to write?
About 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
But what was it like? He's focused, like I got to sit down for a couple of hours a day? Like how did that process go?
Yeah, the process was unique. It wasn't as I originally planned, which was chipping away like that.
Okay.
It then became about, actually I write about Steve Nash and
My favorite athlete of all time,
really?
Steve Nash, by the way.
So Steve Nash grew up playing lacrosse, Canadian.
Soccer, his dad's a soccer
Exactly,
player,
yeah. And I got to spend some time with him, especially towards the back portion of my career in my 30s, and would ask him advice in Manhattan Beach around, hey, what did it take when you were 40 years old to compete at a high level? And one of the lessons he told me was, hey, you could do everything right and show up to the gym and your knees and your joints aren't feeling good, shut it down. He was like, sometimes you may not have had a great amount of sleep and the proper nutrition. You show up to the gym, you're feeling really good. He was like, extend those workouts. So when I was writing the book, sometimes you just show up and you're ready to write and there's nothing there. And when I was feeling the energy and the momentum, I'd block off 4 hours and just try to write a ton at a time. So it was more big chunks than consistent small ones. The overall message is that there's no such thing as a blueprint in how to become great at whatever it is you're aiming to become great at.
Sure.
Because we all come from different walks of life, different experiences. Some face challenges earlier, some face challenges later. So what I try to do is pair examples from some of the greats in their preparation, in their strategies, in their execution, and you'll find that some of them are totally different.
Sure.
So you go, oh, this works for this person, that works for the other, what might work for me? That was the goal. The guarantees that I've found studying all athletes and successful folks is that there will be pain, it's guaranteed, and you must be persistent, i.e. have patience for the long game. Now, regarding Own the Morning, I think a lot about the translation to the game. And for me, if I went out in the first quarter, ball on my stick, put the ball in the back of the net on my first shot, I was gonna be in flow state. And I was gonna have 3, 4, 5 goals. Now, unfortunately, most of the time you don't get the ball in the first possession, and most of the time you don't get a shot on your first dodge, and if you do, it can get deflected or saved by the goal, or you miss the net. So how do you respond is part of what I write. On Own the Morning, we are all in control of what we do when we wake up. And to me, that's like having the ball on your stick, taking your first shot, and hitting back of the net. If you have a great start to the day, you in theory can hit flow state and have a great finish.
Talk more about, I'm interested in flow state because I've read a little bit about it and how if the task at hand is a little bit too difficult, it's hard to get into the flow state. Or if it's too easy, your brain knows it too well, it's a little bit too difficult to get into flow state. Everything's got to be kind of in the right mix to get into that mind frame.
Yeah. Well, another way of describing it is being in the zone.
Yeah.
And that requires confidence and a level of calmness and then loads of preparation. So if you're prepared, you have the right confidence going into a game or a task, and you're calm, you have poise. That's, to me, those are ingredients that have to be there to hit a flow state. And then some other things that have to fall in your direction. But I think one of the greatest coaches ever that understood flow state and looked at game days and saying, okay, it's my job to get my players into a flow state and maintain it. That was Phil Jackson. And he's known as the Zen master. He'd bring everyone in and meditate, and if you missed a shot or made a turnover, he wouldn't scold you on the sideline. He'd try to get your confidence back up.
One thing we do here, since we got about 5 minutes left on my show, is called Gallen of Questions. So I got this can. It's a gallon can.
Okay.
Crazy, random, could be anything in here. You want to try and knock all these out and see what we come up with?
Yeah, let's see.
All right, jump in there. Paul Rabil, Gallen of Questions. Let's see what we come up with.
Okay, what's more difficult, going to the NBA like Pat Spencer or the NFL like Chris Hogan? So I would say more difficult is Pat Spencer. Now, Pat, much like Chris, they were really talented high school basketball and high school football players.
Yep.
But the reason why I say it's more difficult for Pat is basketball, to be in the NBA, you basically can't miss in practice. Your three-pointer has to be at a clip that's well above 40%.
Sure.
That's really difficult to do, especially when you're in a game and you have a hand in your face. And so I think the transition, if you miss playing those formative collegiate years and then pick up a ball again, is more difficult than essentially being a fantastic athlete like Chris Hogan, dropping your stick and still dodging by cornerbacks.
Either way, incredibly impressive. I was super impressed by what Pat Spencer's been able to do. That just seems so difficult, so incredible. You kind of answered this already. Favorite thing about Philly?
Ooh.
Favorite thing about Philly?
Yeah, I would say the link.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I had an amazing time there. I won a national championship in 2005 with Johns Hopkins at the link. We actually had Pats the night before.
Okay.
So I was introduced to my first proper Philly cheesesteak.
Nice.
And I had 2 of them the night before, which nutrition was in such a different place then than it is now.
But it works, right?
It worked.
Yeah, for sure. Jump in there. Let's see what else.
All right, here we go. Wildest place you've been because of the sport? Oh, that's a great question.
Could be a country. Could
I would
be
say Tokyo.
A room. Okay, yeah.
Tokyo, and not wild in that it's it's just crazy place, but amazing. The culture of the Japanese is also so beautiful, and they embrace lacrosse. Even more than at times you would feel America does,
Sure.
even that it's our indigenous game.
It's really cool. I've always wanted to go to Japan. If you could give one piece of advice to a 13-year-old lacrosse player just starting, what would it be?
Oof. I would say give it a little time.
Okay.
When I started playing, I was 12.
Okay.
And had it not been for my mom, who said, "No, you can't quit. I'm going to drive your ass to practice."
You wanted to quit.
I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
It's really hard to play.
Yeah.
It's a bit like hockey, but I would say even more challenging out of the gates because the ball's aerial.
Sure.
And the puck's on the ice, and you can kind of track it and just hit it.
Sure.
So if you stick with it, which requires a lot of resilience, and you figure out how to catch and throw, then you're going to really fall in love with it. All right.
Keep going.
Here we go. Start bench cut. Paul's.
The Paul's edition.
Okay. So Paul Rudd, Paul McCartney, Paul Newman.
Yeah, you got to start one, bench one, or cut one.
Okay.
So who's the best of the Pauls?
Probably Paul McCartney.
All right, fair.
Yeah.
Now bench one.
I love Paul Rudd, so maybe I'll leave him on my reserve, and then Paul Newman.
Paul Newman, one of the greatest actors of all time. Favorite non-all-star pro athlete of all time? So who's
interesting.
The guy that is not like your LeBron, your Michael,
yeah,
but someone that you admired that was a grinder that still got the job done, but maybe wasn't on the level of the all-time greats. Could be your sport, could be any sport.
Yeah. I would say.
Tough question.
No, it is a tough question because in basketball, this is an NBA question?
It could be any
sport.
This is
any sport.
Yeah,
so I'm thinking, okay, so I would say, there's a chapter in my book, it's called The Sixth Man, where I write about Manu Ginobili and how basketball celebrates the guy coming off the bench with an annual award. That's why I'm trying to think, who's the best sixth man? And I'm going, well, they're all stars too. So I write, what is your equivalent of a sixth man in your sport?
Yeah.
I think I'll go back going back to the days where I grew up watching basketball, and although my dad would dislike me for saying this as a Carolina Hooper, I would have to say Shane Battier.
All right, yeah, that's a perfect answer.
Shane Battier was like that guy.
Yeah.
And I was hesitating because he was probably an all-star at one point, but he was definitely up for Player of the Year in college.
Yes, he was.
He was just the backbone of Duke basketball.
Yeah.
He would take charges, he would hustle, he would get the team up into that flow state. Took me a while.
That's a good one.
Shane
Though.
Battier.
That was a good one. Soup, salad, or sandwich? Soup, salad, sandwich.
Sambo.
Sambo?
Yeah.
Let's see if we can grab a couple more here before we got to go. Let's see. All right, would you rather talk in front of 1,000 people or get run over by 2 defenders at full speed?
Talk in front of 1,000 people.
Oh.
Yeah. That's what we're doing now.
Yeah, dude. What's one thing you never travel without?
Phone charger. Boring.
You could say a toothbrush or some people do. What's the last song you listened to?
Actually, a Chris Lake song this afternoon.
There you go.
It's called California.
Last
Big
one.
hype song.
Favorite lacrosse slang term?
I would say whip.
Whip?
Yeah.
What's it mean for those?
Well, it takes multiple meanings. So it's the way you string your stick. It's kind of like our Ovechkin curve.
Okay.
In a lot of ways, you have a lot of hold. And it's also a shot if you have a whip stick, and then the whip snakes as well. So
I like it.
there you go.
Paul Rabil went through the Gallen of Questions.
Went through it. That was fun.
That was awesome.
We should have just started that way, as long-winded
That's a good icebreaker, right? Better in the beginning. Maybe I'll do that from now on. Paul Rabil, thanks, my friend.
Appreciate you having me.